Welcome back students to Designing Digital Solutions training program specifically created for Smart India Hackathon 2019. I am Nitin Bhide and I have 25 years of experience in developing software. In today's session, we are going to continue where we left last. In the last session, we talked about version control, positives, negatives, do's and don'ts. In today's session, we are going to do a hands-on using Git as our version control system. Let's begin. Let me introduce myself. I am Nitin Bhide. I am facilitator for this session. I am a techie by nature. By education, I am a metallurgist. My degree is in BE Metallurgy from College of Engineering, Pune, and I have done my post-graduation in Materials Technology from IIT Powai. In the past, I was Chief Software Engineer in Geometric Limited. I also had my own startup. I started my software career in MSD CAD in Tata Motors. Later, I joined Geometric Limited and worked on architectural CAD design software to Class A surfacing software for car exterior design to developing a DevOps infrastructure for Geometric. I have hands-on programming experience on 8-9 programming languages starting from C, C++, Python, JavaScript and various domains from CAD PLM to web applications to mobile apps. You can find more about me in my website thinkingcraftsman.in and on my blog blog.thinkingcraftsman.in. If you have any doubts about this session, you can always reach me or email me at my email ID nitinbhide@thinkingcraftsman.in. Welcome to part 2 of our how to develop software in team. In first part, we talked a lot about what is version control, what are the benefits and what are the do's and don'ts of version control. Now in this part, we are going to get our hands dirty with Git, and we are actually going to start from installing Git, creating a Git repository, experiment with various Git commands, and then there are some extra tips on how to use Git during Smart India Hackathon as well. So let's start with, everybody has heard with this Git, but why the name Git? What does it mean? So this is what the Git man page says about the name Git. The name Git was given by Linus Torvalds when he wrote the first version of this version control system. He described this Git tool as a stupid content tracker, and the name, depending on how you look at it, can represent various things. It's just a random 3-letter combination that is pronounceable and not actually used by any existing Unix command. The fact that it is a mispronunciation of get, because you are trying to get files from your version control, may or may not be relevant. It's just a stupid, contemptible, despicable, simple, take your pick from the dictionary of slangs. If you are in good mood, you can call it a global information tracker. If you are in bad mood, you can call it a goddamn truckload of shit when it breaks. Up to you. Essentially, name Git doesn't have a meaning. It's just a name and we use it. Git is a distributed version control system. What it means is, in a typical centralized version control system, only the central server has the copy of the entire history of the repository. All the various previous versions, the tracking of the information and the history database is located at the central server. When you are working on a distributed version control, each developer has its own working copy as well as its own repository copy. Now this repository copy is stored in a folder called .git. We'll see how that folder works, but as you can see, every developer has its own copy of working copy and has its own repository. So technically there is no master as such, it's just a convention, and there are services who help you host a repository. One of the service is GitHub. There are many other. Bitbucket is another prominent example. GitLab is another prominent example where you can host your own Git repository. Now, today we are going to start by installing the Git software first, Git client on your own machine, and then we will see how to create a repository on GitHub, and then we will do the exercises using those repository. Now, follow my example step by step, but once you have done the initial repository and created a file, do experiment to learn more commands from Git. Don't just follow what I have shown today, because Git has many more features which are impossible to cover in a 1 hour session. So, let us open your browser and go to gitscm.com. So, let us start with let us go to downloads page. You will find multiple downloads for different OSs. For the demo purpose, we are going to use the Windows version. Windows, download Git for Windows setup. And this will download a exe. Once you have downloaded Git for Windows, search for Tortoise Git. Tortoise Git is a GUI or GUI for graphical user interface for Git on Windows. Again, go to download page, select the appropriate 64-bit or 32-bit version as appropriate, download it. Now, I already installed Tortoise Git and Git for Windows, so I am not going to download this and install. But once you install it, there are two things you should be able to see. Okay. Go to open a command prompt and type Git. If everything is Git for Windows is installed properly, you will see a message, help message like this. If you get this message, Git is installed properly. Then go to Windows Explorer, right click, and now you will see a menu called Tortoise Git. Okay. Go and click on the settings, and you will get a pop-up like this. That means your Tortoise Git is installed properly. Now, let us go to GitHub and create a new repository. If you are new to GitHub, then you have to sign up with a username, email and password and create an account. I already have a GitHub account, so I am just going to sign in. So, I have signed in. You will have to go to new repository, click on it, and you will get a new repository page. Let us call our repository hello Git, because we are learning Git. Let us give it a description: repository for learning Git commands for Smart India Hackathon. Okay. For now, I am creating this repository as public. Now, if you create the repository as public, anyone can see the contents of this repository. So, let us make it private so that only you can see it, experiment and learn. Just click on create repository. And you are done. So now you have a Git repository created on GitHub. Okay. Let's see what this Git repository contains. So first step is to clone this repository or copy this repository from Git to your local machine. Now for this, I have created a folder called hello git, and now we are going to clone this repository. Type git clone, copy this URL, https github. Now when you do it, the username where you see Nitin Bhide, you will probably see your own name, and the repository will be whatever repository name you have given. Don't just type github Nitin Bhide hello git.git, probably you will not get anything. Make sure that you are using your own repository. So you'll get a message that now you are cloning into hello git. It says it appears you have cloned an empty repository, which is correct because right now we have not yet added anything into this repository. Now when you create a Git repository and when you commit something, Git needs to know your name before it will allow you to commit anything. So first step is, let's set your username. In this case, I am saying Nitin Bhide. Okay, let's do a git config username. Yeah. Okay, the mistake I did was when I said git clone, it created a hello git folder inside my current directory. Okay, so I have a hello git inside hello git. We'll see how to fix that later. So I have set up my username. Now Git identifies user uniquely based on their email ID. So you have to set the email ID as well. So let's do that. Git config user dot email, and let's say Nitin Bhide at thinkingcraftsman.in. Now the distributed version control or version control makes sense when you are working in a team. Now while I am demonstrating you the examples, so just to show you two users, I am going to clone the same repository again in another folder, and I am going to show you how two users can interact with Git by using two different folders. So let's do a git clone again. Okay, so let's call our user Sachin. Okay, so let me create a folder called Sachin. And inside this folder Sachin, I am going to clone the repository again. Git clone hello git. Okay. Again, it will give me a message that I am cloning a empty repository. Okay, now it says you appear to have empty repository because right now there is no content. So, inside Sachin folder it also created a hello git folder, and you will see that it says 0, nothing. So, the same way we configured our previous folder for Nitin Bhide, let us configure this Sachin folder for Sachin. So, I am git config user dot name Sachin config user dot email. I am just going to use my another email ID to distinguish between two names. So, now we have two repositories, one for user Nitin and another for user Sachin. Okay. Now, let's go to repository of user Nitin. Just so that we are always clear, let us create a separate folder for Nitin. So, we have two folders for two different users and each one contains a copy of the repository. Now, what we have here, the empty repository, empty hello git repository is our working copy, right? But then where is our repository? Our repository resides in a hidden folder named .git, and if you go to that folder you will see it has a lot of interesting things: hooks, info, objects, ref, config, description, head, whatnot. What each of this means you will be able to see when you go to git detailed documentation or go through the git source code. Today we are not going to go and see what is inside the .git folder. Let us just assume that whenever I create a git repository, all my history is stored in .git folder and all my source code or working copy is in my original hello git folder. Okay. So, now let's go and create a hello world CPP. Okay. Let us create a new hello git dot open it, copy the code, done. Now, the first thing we have to tell Git is I want to add this file into the repository. So far I have shown you how to do things from command line. Okay, let's go to our command line. Now, you have to do git add hello git dot cpp. Done. Now, let us do a git commit. Now, when you do a git commit, you can always give it a message by giving him a .m option. A hello world example for git usage. Okay. And then we are saying all the modified files in this folder are to be committed. So, I am just giving a dot and it will detect all the files in the current folder and commit those. Okay. So, it says file is changed 8 insertions because there are 8 lines in this file and it created a new mode at hello git.cpp. Now, let us go to our different user Sachin and see if there are any changes here. Nothing. Hello git.cpp is still not here. Let us try to go to the, I will open another command prompt so that you can see what I am doing with Nitin and what I am doing with Sachin. So, let us go to E drive hello git Sachin hello git. Now the git command to get the changes from GitHub server into your own repository is called git pull. So let's do a git pull. Okay. You have not modified anything, so nothing. Now let's do a push. You had done a commit. Now let's push those changes to GitHub from our user Nitin. Okay. See, it created a new branch, master. Okay, and it says there are 3 objects and lot of statistics information of how many bytes are sent and all that. Right. Now let's do a git pull again. Okay. Now I will see that I have a file hello.git which was committed by Nitin and now available to Sachin as well. Now let's go to this user Sachin and let's modify this hello git file. Let's open it with Notepad and see out. Hello, I am Sachin. We did see how to commit on the command line. Let's see how I can commit with Tortoise Git GUI. So I do a git commit. It shows me a message experimenting with Git. Let's say commit success. Now we need to push these changes to GitHub. So we have to call git sync. We are pushing our changes from Sachin to GitHub. So let's do a push. Now Tortoise Git shows you the actual git command it is executing. So you can also learn how to use git command line by using git Tortoise Git GUI. Okay, let's go to Nitin folder now. Remember, we are in Nitin folder. Let's pull our changes. Now, when you are actually trying to follow my instructions, what you can do is talk with one of your teammates or one of your friends, and one of you can play the role of Nitin, another can play the role of Sachin. So whenever I say I am executing these instructions on Sachin folder, your friend can execute those instructions. You can execute the instructions for Nitin, and this way you will really get the feel of how to work in the team. Okay. Right. See this message, hello, I am Sachin. This was entered by Sachin, committed and pushed by Sachin, and now I am able to see it in Nitin's repository as well. So far we have created 2 versions of hello git .cpp file. Let us see the history of this file. Okay. I am going to Sachin, I am selecting the hello git TPP, I am going to tortoise git and I am clicking on show log. Okay. It says now the history is shown in the reverse order. So, latest changes are on the top and historical changes are at the bottom. As you can see here, it has a author and it has a date. So, it shows you the latest changes were done by Sachin at 4:36 p.m. and the message that Sachin has entered was experimenting with Git, and the file that he has modified is hellogit.cpp. Okay. If I want to go to older version, I can just click on the older version and it will say now this author was Nitin Bede, it was committed at 4:32 p.m. The message that Nitin used was hello world example for Git usage and the file modified was hellogit.cpp. Now, you can click on the file and then there are other menus available. For example, I can just click on show changes as unified diff and it will tell you this green line is the line that Sachin added. So, it will tell you one file changed, one line inserted and the line was modified at line number 12. You can also do a command called blame, which shows you every line and who modified that line and when. For example, it shows that from line 1 till 6 were modified by Nitin Bide in revision number so and so, date and what was the message. Then there is a new line at line number 7 that was added by Sachin and it shows you revision, date and modifications. Blame is a command that you can use to track the history and track the changes. The way you can see the log at a file level, you can also see a log at the repository level. Now, again you will see the same kind of file information that there are two files. Now, let us allow Sachin to add a file. This is not really a Java code. Now, let us add this file into tortoise git. Let's commit it. And as usual, let's push it. Meanwhile, while the push process is completing, let us check the log now. See, in actions you will see a plus, which means a new file is added. Okay. and it has a message that now adding Java file, which file was added, all this information is available. Let's go to our command prompt and do a git pull. Okay. Let's try from command line. Yep, work. Let's do a pull again. Okay, so I got the app.java file, Nitin's code base as well. Now what I'm going to do is modify the same line of code in both the files, and let's see what happens. Let's go to hello. Okay. So I'm going to modify the same line and then commit the file. Okay, I have not yet pushed it, remember, I have just committed in my local changes in my local repository. Now let's do the same thing with Sachin. And I'm going to commit. Okay. Now let's assume that Nitin pushed his changes first into the GitHub. Let's try to pull those changes in Sachin's repository. Okay, so let's try pushing first. Let's try to push the changes. The push is failed. Now, if you want to be a software developer, this is a first tip for you. Always read the error message very, very carefully. Okay, so let's read our message. So I tried to push Sachin's changes and the error message says updates were rejected because the remote, that means the GitHub, contains a work that you do not have locally. It also has a more detailed hint. This is usually caused by another user pushing to the same reference. You may want to first to integrate the remote changes before pushing again. So that means while I was trying to push my changes, somebody else, in our case Nitin, has pushed his changes into the repository. Now I have to first pull the changes from GitHub. Whatever changes Nitin has done, merge those locally in my repository. Once all those conflicts are resolved, I will be able to push into the GitHub repository again. So, let us try a pull. Now, in our case, our pull is probably going to fail because, yeah, see, it shows here github.cpp and there is a conflict, because we have modified the same line where Nitin has modified. So, let us try to resolve our conflict. So, you have to click on edit conflicts, right. Now, it shows you the line that Nitin has changed, and in another window it shows you line where the Sachin has changed, and then you have a lot of question marks which says I am confused which line to take, Nitin's changes to take or Sachin's changes to take. So, at this point Sachin is going to be magnanimous and say, okay, let us take Nitin's changes first. Use the text block from the left, okay, and then save these changes, mark them as resolved. Once it is resolved, there are no conflicts. Okay. Close it. See, your file list is empty because there are no conflicts now. You can do a commit. Right. Let us look at how our history looks like at this point from the point of view of Sachin. Here Sachin has not yet pushed his changes in the repository. So, let us see the log. Okay. It says adding a Java file, then it has testing conflicts which is Nitin Bede and is merged, and now let us do a push again. Remember, my changes are overwritten by Nitin's changes. So, I do not see that in my history. Then it says everything is up to date, done. I have showed you how you can make changes, how do you add file, how do you commit file, how do you pull changes from other users, and if the same line is changed by two different users, how do you resolve the conflicts as well. Now, I have done few additional settings, and one of the settings is when you start using Git and anytime you start doing a push or a pull, it will probably give you a pop-up saying that you need to enter GitHub username and password. So, you may be wondering, I am getting this pop-up, how come I do not see this pop-up in the training? The trick is a setting called git config credential dot helper and cache. First time when you enter your username password, Git will remember that username password, and next time when you try to do a push or a pull, it will use the cached username password, so that you do not have to enter that every time. It is just a convenience feature. It also allows you to delete the saved username password, but once you set up the credential helper cache, it's much more easier to use. Okay. Let's go back to our repository. We did a clone. Remember, it says remote repository URL. This is always going to be your GitHub URL if you are working with GitHub. If you are pulling from directly from your own friend, then you can either use git ::ssh or http or some other repository URL. What kind of repository URLs are possible? You can always check by going to the help page of git clone. And to do that, this is how you can get help for any git command. Let's see the help for git clone. So, whatever command I want to use, say git, then the command and then dash dash help. It will open a help page in the browser. And that has a detailed information about the git clone command. This is the best way to learn details of various git commands. So, we did clone, then we set up our username and email. Now, when you say type your username, type your actual name there. Don't just become blind and say arrow, type your name. Don't do it like that. Then you add your first file, then you commit the file. Always remember the commit message. Don't keep it blank. So, when you do a commit, it creates a local revision. It is not yet available to other users. When you do a push, the local revision is copied to the remote repository, and for that you need to do git push command. Once you have done the push, you need to do a pull. So, if you do not have that repository in your local repository, only those revisions will be pulled from the remote repository. What happens in the conflict? What happens if two developers change the same file? We saw what happens. We saw how to resolve the merge conflict with Tortoise Git. I am showing it with GUI because it is easier to do it with GUI, but you can do the same thing in command line as well. Remember the git credential helper. Git config pull.rebase is a convenience command. Right now, I am not going to go into the difference between the merge and the rebase, but I urge you to check the information about git pull rebase. So, you can just go to git pull, say help, and then check the option. Rebase. There are a lot of terms here which you need to understand a little bit details of how Git works behind the scene to understand how really the Git rebase works. Now, one of the problem you are going to face when you are participating in Smart India Hackathon, in those 36 hours, there will be 20-30 teams around you who are also trying to access internet, trying to connect to GitHub and trying to pull the changes or push the changes from GitHub. Okay. And with so many people trying to do a push and pull, your repository or the connection to GitHub may become really slow. Now, one way is you run the git daemon or your own Git server on one of the repositories. So, select one machine as your Git server, clone your Git repository and then just say git daemon. Basically, you are running a local server on your own repository, and you can push, pull, commit your changes in this local server. That way you don't have to reach to GitHub every time. At the end of the Smart India Hackathon, from this local server you can push all your changes back into the GitHub server. Remember, I showed you the initial version of how the distributed version control looks like. Think of one of your developer machine as your GitHub server, and using Git daemon you can create your own local Git server. I think I have given you enough information to work efficiently in team and to make sure that you don't spend a lot of time solving silly issues like issues merging code from one team member to another, issues like you modified some change and you don't remember what and you want to go to a known good working state. With Git and these basic Git commands, you will be able to work much more efficiently. Do learn other Git commands, do learn what options available in Git clone, in Git push and Git pull. One big aspect of Git that we have not covered is Git branching. Search on Google for Git branching and you will get a lot of information on Git branching. One other resource you can use is Tortoise Git help file. You can go to help and it has a lot of details, introduction, what is the daily use guide, how do you commit your changes, how do you get status information, how do you pull, how do you sync, how do you run the Git daemon. Okay. There are a whole lot of information and help is available. Please go through the tips and tricks section, help section. It has a detailed command reference for all the commands. For example, I told you about branch. So here is how you can create a branch, check out a branch, switch from one branch to other, even delete a branch. This is an invaluable help reference. Go through that and read it, update it, and then use it in your Smart India Hackathon. Based on what I have seen in last two hackathons, the teams that use Git or any other version control that they are comfortable with definitely has an edge over other teams who are trying to merge code using pen drives, who are trying to remember what changes they did by doing Control Z and wasting whole lot of time that they don't have. Remember, it's important that in those 36 hours you work on new features and make sure that you don't waste your time. Use version control and be productive in Smart India Hackathon. In last two sessions, we talked about how to develop software in teams. What are the common mistakes that teams do when they don't use version control? How to use version control, what are the best practices, and we also did a lot of hands-on using Git as our version control system. Always remember, teams, software development teams that use version control are the happy and productive teams. Thank you.